Really growing up, church was a big part of my identity. I wanted to be a good Christian so badly. I was so scared of messing up. I remember when I was a child, and especially as a teenager, I started to feel at times, hopeless and worried all the time. And I remember, going to youth pastors or people that I trusted within the church and to ask them how to navigate through those feelings. And the answer was always the same. Hey, you should pray more. You should read your Bible more. And ultimately, the thing that was told to me the most was I needed to have more faith. The problem was I really truly leaned into that, and I believed that that's what I was supposed to do to overcome these feelings of hopelessness and worry and doubt. But the more I leaned in, the more those feelings were there. They didn't go away. So even though I understood grace and I understood that I didn't need to beat myself to death to be perfect, to check all these boxes so that those feelings would go away, I still didn't really know what to do with them because the church didn't really talk about mental health, right? So I got really good about hiding what I was feeling and what I was going through. I got really good at pretending everything was okay. I got good at hiding behind, laughing and jokes and just being goofy. It kind of just became who I was, but in reality, I was hiding a lot of pain. Later, Shelby and I would go through a lot of church hurt, especially around ministry. And while that was really hard, I took the approach of, I have to be strong for her. And even in that, feeling like something that I was called to in ministry was ending, I just buried that down and I went to work and I was strong for her. It wasn't until we found out that we were pregnant that things started to really change for me. I had always wanted to be a father, and I was so excited that we were pregnant, and I was even more excited when I found out that we were having a son. But soon that excitement about being a father took a turn for me, and I vividly remember one night, Declan and I went and got dinner together. It was just me and him. We went and got tacos, and then we went to an arcade. We're laughing and having a great time. But in a moment, just like that, it went from being happy to being depressed. And I didn't really know what was going on. It just kind of hit me, and I fell into this pit, is what I would call, of despair. And all of these thoughts about how I'm not doing enough, I'm not a good father, you're going to screw up, you're going to mess up, just started flooding into my mind. And I remember when I finally broke down and told Shelby what was going on, she obviously encouraged me that I was being a good father, and then she encouraged me to look into therapy. Therapy was not something that was talked about in my family. It's not something that was talked about in church for me growing up. My experience at church viewed therapy as something that was not godly or not, accepted within the church. You either needed more faith or you were crazy. And as terrible as that sounds, that was truly my baseline of what therapy was. So it took a while, but I got paired with a therapist, and he's amazing. I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. That was a hard thing to admit, but knowing what was going on for me empowered me more to lean in and to dig deep and to deal with those things. I could choose to be angry and bitter and not lean into healing and restoration. That would be the easy path, but I've chosen the hard path to say, now that I know I can deal with these things, and now that I know there can be healing for me, there can also be healing in my relationships as well, and I want to pursue that. But I understand that our culture does not really leave a lot of space for men to be vulnerable. In March of this year, I lost my friend Will. I first met Will when he invited me and other neighbors over to his house to try out his extensive collection of whiskey and to watch some football, and of course to talk about Alabama, Roll Tide. Will was very generous, one of the most generous people I've ever met. Anyone and everyone was welcome into his home multiple times a week. He's very kind with the children. He even dressed up as Santa on Christmas Eve and knocked on the door and delivered some early Christmas presents to Declan and Caroline. And that was really awesome. But on March 11th, while I was traveling for work 4,000 miles away in Germany, I got the call that Will took his life. Having to grieve alone so many miles away across the world, I just had so many questions that still haven't been answered, and I realized that they probably never will be answered. It's hard not to think about every conversation, interaction I ever had with Will, to see if there's something that I just missed. There were no signs, and I often think about how as men we do a really good job at hiding everything that we're going through. And it just has to change. When you ask a man how he's doing and he says, "I'm fine," he's probably not. But maybe he's too afraid to tell you how he's really feeling. Or maybe he doesn't have the tools to even put to words what he's going through. And so I think our culture has to change. We have to allow space for men to be vulnerable about what they're going through and open about what they're going through without judgment, but rally around them in community. I know that for myself, the turning point for me was when I decided to get serious about my mental health. But it was that initial fear of taking that step that held me back for a long time, and I'm so glad that I took that step and I made that decision. But I think it's time that we change the narrative. It's time that we change the culture, especially within churches, to handle this topic properly. Paul said in Galatians 6:2 to share in each other's burdens. I wonder what it would be like today if those kinds of conversations where men are able to freely be vulnerable and open about what they're going through, if that was just a part of life and normal. I wonder who would still be with us today.